Imagine for a moment that you're on a long and tiring journey. I don't mean in the car or a bus or train, but you're walking. Walking. Miles and miles. And every so often you look up and you think, my destination is a long way over there, at the top of that hill. And maybe after some days, you finally get to the top of the hill, and what do you see? Another hill. And so you think, oh my goodness, I've got to start again, down the other side, cross a river somehow, and up the next hill. Days pass, and you climb another hill. And as you get to the top, you're getting a bit weary now. Your vision, your faith is weakening, and you're thinking, when I get there, at least I'll be able to rest. And as you approach the top of the hill, what do you see? Another hill. And after you've done this another 2 times, you've completely lost hope. You think, I don't know why I'm going on. I might as well turn back. Except, of course, if you turn back, you've got 5 hills to climb up and go down again. So you might as well go on. And this happens so many times you eventually lose count. What possibly would make you keep going? Well, if that's bad enough, imagine it's a desert that you're climbing up through, hills of sand, no rivers, no tree to shade you, just this monotonous sun and sand. It's a picture of the journey of the Israelites as they escaped from their enslavement in Egypt and went towards the promised land. And Moses managed to give them a vision of this promised land that was so inspiring that they kept going. Although, having said that, they did give up at one point and have a go at him. Why did you bring us out here to die? We might as well have been slaves in Egypt. At least we were fed there. You know the way that people moan. Well, the vision that inspired the Israelites was of this great promised land. It rehearses for us the features of the promised land: fine houses, herds and flocks of cattle and sheep, silver and gold in abundance, copper and iron. It's interesting to look at those fine details and think about the significance of them. Silver and gold had long been very precious metals, but copper had become particularly valuable when you could make bronze with it. And with bronze, you could make weapons and farming implements. But that was superseded, as you know, by iron, which was even stronger. So you can see in this list of things almost a history of the movement of the people of Israel from being nomads to becoming civilized, settled peoples. People who no longer had a tent to live in, who no longer knew not where they would sleep or eat next day, towards people who had houses and a civil structure and predictable income and food. There are many parallels with our post-Second World War Western world, particularly in this country. Our provision for health, work, accommodation, food, welfare have improved enormously. Enormously. Although not for all, but for the vast majority of people, life has become unimaginably good. And during the Second World War, this, like every other church in this country, would have been packed with people hoping for their vision: the defeat of Nazi Germany, the end of the war, the restoration of freedom. And where are they now? It's interesting that Jesus asked the question of the grateful leper. So this one leper, who was a Samaritan, considered to be a foreigner, had turned around and come back, having been healed, and came back to give thanks. What he got was a sermon. Are you the only ones who are given thanks? Where are the rest of them? And you think, well, it's a bit mean to ask him. He's the one who has come back. But there is perhaps a message in that, because those who recognize the duty of gratitude also have a responsibility to share that with other people. Well, now we here in this country seem to be on the brink of losing so much. We're losing freedoms as we succumb to this pandemic. We're losing trust in our political leaders as we see the corruption of big business eat its evil way into our society. Are we going to lose all that we have gained? The message to the Israelites was, do not forget, but remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, so that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your ancestors, as he is doing today. And the beginning of Deuteronomy gave us that image. The Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, flowing with streams and springs and waters, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, trees and honey, where you may eat bread without scarcity. There's a lovely story about when President Gorbachev, I think it was, sent an ambassador to Britain to find out how things were organized here. And the ambassador's host was driving around London, and the ambassador said, is that the bread shop there? You like my Russian accent? And the ambassador said, yes. Where are the queues? And the ambassador said, what queues? Well, in my country, people have to queue for bread. Oh, we don't have queues in this country. And the Russian emissary was amazed. He said, I want you to take me to the man who is in charge of bread distribution in London. And of course, the ambassador laughed. We don't have such a thing. It works. Just to point out that what we take for granted for millions of people is an unimaginable luxury, to have bread without scarcity. Of course, the Israelites did forget once things got comfortable, and so have we. The warning in Deuteronomy and in the Gospel about the one grateful leper is that all these wonderful gifts that are promised are dependent upon our appreciating them. It's a bit like a Christmas Day afternoon, when you've given out the presents and you say to your children, if you don't look after your toys, they'll be taken away. How many of you have said that to your children, or had it said to you when you were little? Appreciation tells us how we value something, and appreciation of the giver tells us how much we value the giver. Harvest is the great time to bring to God our thanksgiving for gifts received. And it's a tradition which has its origins way back in the Old Testament, maybe 3,000-4,000 years ago. And you can see why. You can see why. When people like the Israelites had escaped from slavery, had moved from being tribal people living a nomadic life to having a settled life with bread in plenty, not having to worry about whether there be a bush with berries on the next day to find, they give thanks. Harvest is our great time to give thanks for all the things, as well as the obvious, like food and water and homes, the less obvious things like the welfare state, networks of people who bring us our goods, the bakers who bake our bread. But it's also a great time to hope. Giving thanks to God for his gifts in the past is also an expression of our trust that he will continue to do so in the future. The relationship is not over because we have received good gifts. There may still be steep hills and barren wastelands ahead of us, but God is faithful, and good things await the life of faith.